Terry Allen, Magnum, had the car crash.
Right.
And this was after, I'd thrown the fit and left Vince, and went home. I worked back for Florida. It was tough times for that little Florida territory because there was nobody there. That was when I was working with Luger and Bob Root. And really,
right.
I can't think of anybody else. I think maybe Muda might have been first training right around that time, so I worked with Muda a little bit there. Because Muda, had been in the dojo in Japan, so that was the first times I'd been around Muda. But Terry Allen had his car crash, which knocked him out of commission. He's lucky to be here. But Terry and I were real close friends. He was one of those guys, that when I went and bought the Porsche, of course, I was one of the first guys that had a cell phone in my car. So it was a box about this big up in the front hood, and then it had the phone part where you answer here.
Right.
So he'd call me on my cell phone all the time. So we're talking to each other, a cell phone, 1986, 87. Yeah, it was 86 when Terry had his crash. Yeah, so there I was with the cell phone, before that, one of the first guys to have one. So that's how I communicated with everybody. It's, where are you? I'm driving down the road in my car.
Right.
So it was just crazy stuff. But Terry couldn't talk. He couldn't speak because they had to do a tracheotomy on him. And they had him, because of the spinal injury, they had him face down. And I heard the next morning, that he had the crash. I jumped in my car, 600 miles. Yeah, it's 600 miles from Tampa, where I was living, to Charlotte, North Carolina. I was in the wind. I had to get there and see him, because a terrible crash.
You didn't know.
It changed his life, and word was, we thought that he was going to die. He was being kept alive, but I got there. And, I could read it in his eyes, he smiled. But he was the one that convinced Dusty, after I'd run off after the $135 checks. I'd been gone for a few years, and I don't know how they communicated, but, Terry more or less begged Dusty, said, have Barry come back. He's the, he was your guy before. Have him come back. Dusty didn't really want me around, because I'd left him before. He had kind of built that Crockett company, kind of around me there for a while, and then, $135, you got to go somewhere else.
Right.
You can't even buy hamburgers, to live for a week on that kind of money. But Terry Allen, convinced him to have me come back. And Dusty and Jimmy Crockett, they were real tentative about it. When I came back, Dusty called me and he said, I'm only doing this for one reason. That's because Terry wants you.
So they brought you in, and you actually first came with Ron Garvin, I believe, at the time, and defeated with the call-offs.
Yeah. So what he did, he didn't put me right there, in that spot, right by his side, and right in Terry Allen's position, where he was, where Magnum TA, was or had been before his car wreck. But, he kind of felt me out,
right.
Didn't know if I was, flighty, because I'd left him and I'd left Vince. I guess I had, a reputation of just, if I don't like it, I'm leaving. So, I came back and I tagged with Ronnie Garvin, and I believe we won the
U.S.
Yeah, the U.S. Tag Championships together. So Dusty had that much confidence in me by that time, and then it got to where that area that Crockett was promoting at that time. From I don't know that I know that they did. They went up to the Meadowlands, so they were doing big business. So after Dusty had felt me out, and got the confidence, then he kind of started getting me back in that position, to where he wanted me to be. But working with Ronnie Garvin, it was a fun time. There was a time there with the Crockett's, with we had private jets and private planes. It was like it was a 5-year party. It was pretty crazy.
What was it like to work with the Midnight Express?
Bobby Eaton is probably one of the best workers in the business. I mean, he can do anything and still right now come right in here and do, the stuff that he's always been doing. And Bobby Eaton is one of those guys that you just can't help but like. And let's see, the Midnight Express. Let's see, I think originally it was what, Dennis Condrey? Yeah, Condrey. Dennis Condrey was a really good worker too. So I mean, there were guys like I said, it was still in that time, where you didn't sit, in a dressing room and try to figure out a match with each other. Okay, how are we going to do this? Okay, got to remember this. We're going to do this, do this, do this. Those times weren't around yet. So I mean, we worked with those guys, and it's just, it clicked, and we had good times and we had good matches. So Bobby Eaton still to this day, he should be working somewhere.
You just got hired by Clayton.
Good.
Train some guys.
That's good.
Now, what are your memories of the 45-minute TV draw with Ric Flair?
Let's see. You know what? I think I've done more than one.
All right.
So I'm just trying to.
Fayetteville.
Okay. I think it's what it was. It was supposed to be, originally it was supposed to be an hour, but with programming and with the time that it went, it did end up being about, I think it was 45 to 48 minutes.
Right.
And we went live on TV, and Flair and I had worked together so many times, it was, dressing rooms were opposite sides of the building. And it was TV that we were doing, but it wasn't live TV, so, it could be edited or whatever. But at that point, Rick and I had worked together so much, that we knew, you just knew. It's almost like working ability in the ring is almost like knowing what a guy's thinking, or after he does one move, what the next one that's coming, after working with somebody so long. It's learning their style. So Rick knew it about me, and I knew it about Rick, and we would. We do new stuff, and geez, man, I've been working with him since Florida. We did those things. So, I probably worked with Flair. I would say the times are probably. I know I've worked with him over 100 times. And I've gone this hour Broadways with him, and hour and a half.
Right.
I went hours with Harley. I went hours and an hour and a half with Sergeant Slaughter. Of all guys. Good God, man. It's just, that was just a wild time.
What are your memories of working with Tully Blanchard?
I enjoyed working with Tully, that was when, the Horsemen originally started.
Right.
There are a few fans out there, they say to me, yeah, and you're one of the original Horsemen, and I wasn't. I came in after, I believe that it was Ole Anderson, Arn, Tully, and Flair.
Right.
So we shot the deal to where we believe, Dusty and I and Crockett's, believe that I was to the position, that whereas the baby face, that if I turned on Dusty, then it would be the perfect time, to become a heel.
Right.
To where I had learned to work and the ability well enough to lead a match, for guys that, that didn't know, a turnbuckle from the turnbuckle post, So
I think right before you turned, you were teaming with Flex, and you guys were feuding with Foreign Arms.
Yeah. So we fed into it. We fed into it where we did. It was Jacksonville, Florida, where we did that. Luger and I were partners against Tully and Arn, and we did the turn there. And then, of course, the connection with Dusty, because I'd been his partner in so many matches and stuff, and he was the booker. Then he was the next guy. Luger. I think the thing with Luger, just kind of, he took the fall, to where we pounded him, and I became one of the horsemen. And what I believe it was Ole, that stepped aside, and he was more like a manager, if my memory serves me right. But so then, automatically went straight from that.
Were you nervous about being a heel?
You know what? No, actually, no, because to me, working as a heel, you have more control of the match. But it's not really that way anymore. But it used to be as a heel, you more or less, ran you ran the match that you were in. You could call the spots if the other guy had an idea, you either okay or you could just shoot it down. That's the heels usually were the more experienced guys. And I thought it was right, and I thought the thing with the Horsemen, would be good, because we actually had some baby faces then, that I could work with, to change the tone of things, because we were doing great business, but things kind of had a set pattern. So, you always shoot an angle or you do something to change it up. So that was kind of an out of the blue thing. So then turning on Luger and becoming one of the Horsemen, and then Dusty, trying, what's happened to you? What's wrong with your mind?
Right.
And then turning on him, it really set the stage. So then there I went from wearing blue jeans and boots, to nice suits, and, and geez, I remember Flair taking me to the shoe store, and I bought a $1,000 pair of shoes that I still got them in the closet. But as a Horseman, I'm wearing these slippers, and I'm more comfortable with boots and stuff. But there I was, in the suit and tie, and the $1,000 shoes. But I became one of the Horsemen, and I really thought that the time was right to be a heel. And I still want to work as a heel, but the business turned to where you can work any way you want anyway.
Now, what do you remember working with Hawk and Animal, the Road Warriors?
The first time that I worked with them was in a show that was at the Orange Bowl that I had spoken of before.
Right.
And, it was a big deal, for Dusty and for the Florida Wrestling Promotion, to put that show together. So the Road Warriors, Mike Rotundo and I were booked to work with the Warriors. And I believe that we were just as tentative of them as they were of us, because, they're two intimidating guys. But, Rotundo, is gutsy, and, and I just go with the flow.
Right.
So, but, we found out, that they were just as nervous about the matches, as we were. It's like, geez, what are we going to do with these guys? So then when we're in the ring, who's the heel? Who are the heels? So I started calling the match with them, and Mike and Joe, they just couldn't believe it. We're having this match, and we're enjoying the whole thing, and here we are out in this big giant stadium. We've been, 3/4 of one side of the Orange Bowl is full, and it's just, it was one of the first ones that were done like that, those big shows. So, we didn't get to talk to them before, but after, me and Rotundo snuck around underneath, and found a way where they were. And man, they were as excited about the match as we were, because we didn't have any idea. We had never worked with the guys, and we'd just seen them on TV like they had seen us. And the match
And when you
turned out well.
Actually, yeah. When you eventually turned on Dusty, what was it like working with him again?
Well, that's when Dusty was in his, like his real heyday. Dusty, still, is capable. He's still capable of getting over, in the ring and on TV. He's a little older, and he can't work the style, that the guys do now. But just last night, he and I had a match with Carino and Eric Watts, and I mean, it was just old style. We didn't send any spots over or anything. We just went out there and we had fun. But Dusty, immediately, I started working with Dusty, because of the connection that had been established, on the television programming. Right. But he always beat me. So that was, I would say to him, I'd say, Dust, you and I always shoot ideas off each other. I said, I got to beat you up sometime,
What do you remember you working with Nikita?
I worked with Nikita. He was one of the first guys that I think that it might have been a tester match. I don't know, because they turned. I think how Dusty did the thing with Magnum, Terry Allen, is that he turned Nikita babyface right after that, to fill that hole. So I hadn't been there a very long time, and I didn't know him, and he worked his gimmick even with the boys.
Right.
He'd talk. He didn't want anybody to know his real name. And he was working all the time. And talking the fake Russian talk and everything. And man, he was stiff in the ring. He was just, everything was. The Road Warriors had a reputation, for being able to lay out. But Nikita, man, he was, he was rugged. He was a big, strong guy, but he still had working ability. But he was just a big, strong guy, and he was, like I said about a couple of the others, that you've asked me about, when he hit you with something, you knew it was there.
Now you also worked a little program with Dr. Death, Steve Williams, I believe. What was it like working with?
Yeah. Steve Williams and I are good friends, and Steve, is working for All Japan now. I don't know if Steve will admit this or what, but anyway, his first son's name is Wyndham too. So I don't know if Steve thinks as much of me as I do of him, but he's I had a good time working with him. And he's one of those guys that, I believe, that the people that are gonna look at this, they know about the wrestling business and they know what it is. But there are guys that work, different ways. There's some guys that you can't even feel them, when you're working with them, and then there's others you're getting your ass kicked.
Right.
So you gotta work that way. So you have to be able to adjust. And so there are some guys in the business that just won't do it. Just refuse to work with somebody. But I was always one of those guys that said, okay, this is the style we got to work. It's more of, it was about a half shoot. When he'd take you over or take you down, man, you were there. He was all over the top of you. But Steve broke a couple of my bones and separated my shoulder a couple times, and I think the worst that I got hurt with Steve is we were in Alexandria, Louisiana, and it was with Crockett and UWF. They were doing co-promotions.
Right.
They were working together, and I was in the corner, and Steve wanted to give me that belly to back suplex, and when he did, he didn't turn me all the way, or even, I don't know, it's just a mistake. But man, when he turned me, I landed straight on my shoulder. So when I stand up after I take the bump, my shoulder's separated about this far. So I hang my arms down at my side, and one arm is like one arm's hanging this much farther down. He goes, "Oh, brother, look at your arm," you know. And I said, "Yeah, brother, look at my arm." And I'm not, you know, I've already said this thing a couple of times. You know, I'm not trying to play like, you know, I'm a tough guy or anything, but we had 45 minutes that we had to wrestle. So this was 5 or 6 minutes into the match, and we finished the match. And you know, and he was careful enough with me, you know, to where in his own, he's like a gorilla. You know, he's like a half-tamed gorilla. You know, he's
Right.
man, he's so strong and everything. What he does, you know, but he did. So then after that, he started working my legs. So he didn't break my legs or anything. But here I was with a separated shoulder, so I'm fighting him with one hand,
Right.
and I'm going, "Oh, God, man, my shoulder's killing me." So anyway, I got to go home for 3 weeks after that. So
Little vacation.
I kind of glad it was a little vacation that I got after working a deal with Steve.
Eddie Gilbert.
Eddie Gilbert. Eddie Gilbert and I we were pretty good pals, and always when we worked together, I mean, it was like his ability in the ring was just, it was outstanding, you know, because he knew his craft, and he was, you know, he came into wrestling the way I did. You know, his father had wrestled and had done some promotion, and you know, he had to learn the hard way. You know, he worked hard, you know, to get into the business. And Eddie wasn't, you know, he wasn't the biggest guy in the world either. Man, I mean, his working ability was great, and his sense of humor was just outrageous. And when we'd work with each other, we would have to cover our faces half the time because we were laughing at each other because some of the silly stuff we're doing. I mean, there were just little quirks and quips that we would just shoot at each other during the match. I mean, we weren't even calling spots. We were just doing stuff that we knew how to do. We just working a match. And I mean, working with him was so much fun for me, and I know it was for him too. And it was just, you know, it was a real joy to get to work with him because he was a smart guy. You know, he booked some territories, and you know, and he helped out. You know, he helped out that way with some of the companies that he worked with. So Eddie just, you know, I don't know how Eddie went. You know, he just a nosedive off the deep end. You know, and he had so much ability. You know, and it was a real loss.
What are your memories of working with Ricky Steamboat?
Steamboat in my opinion was probably when quote unquote, you know, there were baby faces and heels, was of the era that I've wrestled was the best baby face and possibly, you know, one or possibly the best worker. And his attitude and the way that he carried himself professionally, Ricky Steamboat is nothing but a gentleman. And you know, he has my total respect. He's second to nobody.
Going back to 1988, what were your thoughts when Arn and Tully left to go to WWF, and were you ever contacted to go with them?
You know, I think it was just another one of those deals where an idea or an angle or something had run its course, and egos get in the way of a lot of things. And something that I've learned, you know, from this business is that, you know, pride is a hard thing to swallow, and you know, you got to do it sometimes. Pride, you know, you got to do what's right, and you know, your pride and I don't know if pride and ego, you know, mean the same thing, but they just they can get in the way of a lot of things. And I believe that when they left and went to New York, you know, that they just thought that they had a better deal, and I don't think that it panned out for them the way that it planned, you know. And so So it was, that was just one of those moves in the wrestling business, you know, that it didn't become everything that it was planned to be, I think.
What was the locker room's reaction though? Did they think that something bad was really going on with the company they're in because these guys just left like that? And didn't Ron Garvin, why did Ron Garvin leave at that time too? Because he just turned heel on Dusty, and then I think they maybe had like 2 house show matches, and then he left. Were the people getting concerned?
You know, I'm trying to recall exactly what that period was, because I think that the peak of the business with Crockett, you know, had kind of run its course, and I still think that's the same period. That's when, if I'm not mistaken, and you know, y'all may know better than I do, that was when Turner, they were in the process of making the deal,
moving to Dallas.
Yeah. You know, the business was, you know, it has its highs and lows, and it's always been that way. I mean, you know, I've been through, you know, I've seen, growing up in the business, I've seen 4 decades, you know, of wrestling. So, you know, it has its highs and its lows, and it's you know, it's like a fad or a fashion. It has its times, and then sometimes people get tired of it. And it had kind of run its course. You know, the houses were dropping, and you know, Crockett was in debt. So the guys weren't making the money, you know, that they were used to making. So they were going, you know, where they could, you know, and they were just trying to make changes. That was about the time that guys started getting guaranteed contracts. So I believe, now going back to the question about Arn and Tully, I think that they were a little bit, you know, where I was saying where ego can get in the way. I don't think that they got offered a contract yet, because Crockett spent so much time trying to get the Road Warriors to sign a contract. But there was a little tension in the dressing room, because everybody was tentative about, you know, it's in the wrestling business, you don't believe everything you hear and half of what you see, you know, because, you know, it's a work. So here are these contracts starting to become guaranteed to guys, and you know, they're 6-digit, you know, contracts. You know, we were used to making, you know, if you had $150,000 a year, you know, that was kind of wasn't too happening. It wasn't too hot then. So I believe that Crockett offered the Road Warriors, and, you know, Mike and Joey, if you guys see this, you know, it's your personal business, but, you know, this is kind of on the line. But, you know, I think Crockett offered them, you know, like $500,000 each, you know, to stay. And once that number got out, you know, some of the other guys, you know, it was like, you know, where's this money coming from, you know, and how is this happening? You know, so it was that was when the real curve came on the business with these guaranteed contracts. And then that's when agents and, you know, attorneys and stuff started getting into the business, and it's a big change. I mean, it's changed the business so much to right now where we're at in wrestling.
What do you remember working with Bam Bam Bigelow?
Bigelow is another one of those guys, you know, that he's a huge guy. He's loaded with personality, you know, in the back. You know, he's not the character that he is in the ring. You know, he's a really funny guy. You know, geez, I hate to compare him to Bobby Jaggers, but I mean, he's always one of those guys that's got something bigger and better than the next guy, or he's run farther or climbed something higher. But Bigelow, you know, he can carry himself around. You know, I like Bam Bam. You know, he was always good to me, and I was good to him. But, you know, it's kind of kind of a funny thing in the dressing room, and I know, you know, that he's got to know, but every time Bam Bam would tell a story in the dressing room, you know, he all the guys are kind of cutting their eyes at each other, thinking, what kind of, okay, what's this line he's shooting at us today? Where did this come from? You know, but he's a working ability. He's a big guy, man. I just remember, you know, having matches with him that were just so easy, and he was so light on his feet, you know. And I'm sure he was 400 pounds, you know. I remember we did, I think I did a superplex off the top rope with him. You know, he stepped up. He said, "Come on, step up," you know, because I didn't want to. Me and Rotundo had broken one of the rings before doing a superplex. It's when they had to start changing the timbers in the rings, because, you know, some of these guys that were taking these bumps, you know, huge bumps, you know, you got 700 pounds, you know, smashing down, and then it gains, you know, the velocity coming down. So Bam Bam wanted to take the superplex off the top rope. So there it is, man. You know, he had gotten up there, and I whacked him, and he dropped down. So the spot was to superplex him. He stepped up to the top, and we broke the center timber in the ring. I mean, these timbers I believe they're 8x8s, you know, center cut timber, you know, so they're strong timber. So this particular show that I remember they had to stop the thing, and they had to prop up the middle of the ring with a piece of pipe. They had to cut the piece of pipe to the right size, so, you know, everybody's waiting. Oh man, what's going on? But I mean, Bam Bam, he can move. You know, you see him, he does cartwheels in the ring. He could probably cut a backflip if he really tried, you know. But he's a true character in the dressing room, even as much as he is in the ring.
How about Sting? You worked with him.
Yeah, Sting is, you know, I've always, I was working as a heel when I first started working with him. So I never, well, I can't say never. Later on down the line, you know, I worked babyface and as his partner some. But he's another one of the guys, you know, that you could just feel that had, you know, it's something you can't, you know, you can't put your finger on it, but it's a charisma, and that people, you know, they like him. And whether, and I'm not saying that he lacked ring ability, you know, because he really didn't. You know, he learned as he went along, and he you know, is a I'm not going to consider him one of the greatest workers, because Sting is what he is because, you know, I think that he's not comfortable in his skin, you know, as the character that he was, you know, with the blonde flat top and having to work through the crowd. I don't think that he was comfortable with it, you know. So you had to. It was a little. It wasn't grudging or anything, but it was sometimes it was difficult because he and I like him. You know, the answer to the question is that I like him, and, you know, I'm sure that, you know, that he has the same opinion of me. But I just think that because when he first started, that he wasn't comfortable with the way that, you know, that he had to work, and Flair and I both, you know, tried to coax him into, you know, like doing the woo to the crowd. You know, he almost hated to do it because he didn't like doing it. But then he learned. You know, he came along, and then he learned, you know, how to work to the people, and then that's how he got over. You know, he's right there with the top names, you know, of guys that have gotten over in the business as far as being, you know, fan favorites.
Right.
There are only a handful of them, and he's one of those guys. You know, I'm trying to remember exactly what. Oh, I know exactly what it was. And it was something I was just talking about. It was the contracts. Okay, here are these guys, you know, making $500,000 a year. And I was like one of the last guys, you know, on the page that they were going to talk to. And it was Jim Hurd, you know, who was the head of the company. And, you know, they just weren't talking to me, you know, about money. And I knew that I wasn't making, you know, what all these other guys around me were, you know, and I was working with these top guys, and I was the one, you know, that was kind of leading them around on a leash, you know, because some of them didn't have, you know, the true ability, you know, to have a match on their own. You know, if you put two, I'm not going to name any names because, you know, some of these guys are the most over guys in the business, but if you put two of them together, you know, I don't think that they could have matches. Well, the money issue was there. And Vince, Pat Patterson lived on Treasure Island over near Tampa. And I had talked to Pat. And Pat said, you know, you can come back anytime you want. He said, Vince is, you know, forgotten and forgiven, which he never forgets. I'll say it again. But not being offered a contract, being the last guy in line, you know, I was making decent money, but I wasn't making what I knew these other guys were making. You know, when I knew they were getting, you know, $15,000, $20,000, you know, every 2 weeks.
Right.
You know, and my checks weren't that. You know, I thought, okay, you know, I got to do something. So I called Vince myself. I gave my notice to Jim Hurd. I told him, I said, you won't even talk to me. You know, I don't know if you don't like me or what it is. Jim Hurd he's a rough guy to deal with. You know, he was hard to deal with. And that was early '89 because I was with the company, and then through the purchase by Turner, that was early in '89. I think I just went home. And when I went home, I called Vince, and he said, I got a spot for you. And he said, we'll come up here and we'll figure out something. And I mean, I was the same character, you know, that I always was, you know, but I put my hair in a ponytail, you know, and I slicked it back. And I was the one that came up with, you know, the name The Widowmaker. I said, Vince, what do you think about this? I said, The Widowmaker is a famous rodeo bull. And I said, what he's done is he's gored, you know, like 6 or 7 cowboys, you know, almost to death. You know, he's killed a couple of guys, you know, this famous rodeo bull, Widowmaker. And actually they had to retire the bull because nobody wanted to ride him when they drew him. So he said, let me think about it. So I told him, you know, okay. I went back to the house, and he gave me a call, and he said, you know what? I think it'll work. I think we can do something with it. So I had my boots made up with, you know, the black with the Widowmaker on them. And I think then that was probably when I was the biggest and in best condition, you know, of my life so far. I was 325 pounds, and you know, and I was doing behind the neck presses, you know, with 305. You know, I was big and I was strong, and that's what Vince wanted. That's what Vince liked. But the Widowmaker thing, the reason it was short-lived, and this is really something, you know, that, you know, it's really kind of personal in my family, but you know, it's common knowledge. Anybody can find out. But my dad and my brother got into some trouble. So I told Vince, I said, I think, you know, that I'm going to be, in one way or another, you know, associated, you know, with what's happened with these guys. And I said, I think it'd be better, you know, if I'm at home instead of, you know, the FBI or the not the DEA. Well, it wasn't the DEA. It was the Secret Service or whatever. Anyway, I said it'd be better. You know, you don't want the publicity.
Right.
You know, if something comes to where there's somehow they think they can tie me in to what's happening. Hey, my dad and my brother, they just made a big mistake. They're in the wrong place at the wrong time and trusted the wrong people, and they just they did something wrong, but I wasn't part of it. But I mean, the people with the Secret Service really thought, that I had something to do with this. So I went home.
This is the counterfeit.
Yeah, exactly. I'll let you say it, but that's what it was. So the guys, they worked it out, to where they got their, they got a minimum sentence, I think, and it was hard. I mean, it was hard for them. It was hard for the whole family, but I just figured it would be best just to be, be out of the limelight, instead of being under investigation, for, I'll say it, I had nothing to do with it, but these people believed that I did, so, I mean, I had everybody on it. The IRS is calling me, the Secret Service, the Sheriff's Department is parked across the street from my house, it's like it was like I was under house arrest.
Right.
So I just thought, okay, man, I got to figure out something I'm going to do. Because, I mean, they called the grand jury, and they couldn't indict me, because I hadn't done anything. So I lived, like in the shadow of this thing that happened, it probably lasted about 4 years, the shadow of that thing, and it's still, my dad and my brother still suffer from it, because it's a felony, and but it's I got through it and they got through it, and it's just it's not spoken of, in the family.
Right.
So that's something that I kind of shared here, that I really didn't want to, but,
I wasn't even.
No, it's okay. It's okay, because, hey, we're telling it like it is. So I left there. I left Vince, and I decided, I called Vince. I thought, okay, I know what I can do. I can work in Japan, and I can do these things. So I started going back to all Japan, and Baba liked me.
Right.
Because he had liked me from, the early 80s when I'd gone over. So he said, Baba could speak perfect English. A lot of the guys he wouldn't even speak to.
Right.
Like couldn't speak English. Yeah. But he told me, he said, you have a job here if you want it. So I was on tour over there, and Jim Hurd called me in Japan. I don't even remember what town I was in, but Jim Hurd found me over there, and he said, "You stupid fucker," he says, "what the fuck are you doing working over in Japan?" He says, "You've been hiding out, you won't return anybody's phone calls." He says, "What's wrong with you?" He said, "I know you're pissed off at me before, you didn't get your contract." He said, "Everybody else," he says, "but he said, we had to get everything in line." He says, "Everybody here tells me that you need to be working here, so get your ass back over here and let's work something out." So I had to tell Baba. I said, "Baba," WCW is offering me a job, and the head boss called me, and I said, "I'll see if I can work something out to where I can work for both of you." Jim Hurd didn't even call me to his office that time. We were standing outside the building in Houston, Texas. I think we were at the Summit, something like that. He said, "Okay, goddamn, what's it gonna take for me to keep you here and keep you satisfied?" I said, "Jim," and I never spoke back to it that way because, my theory is kill people with kindness. It's, when somebody knows that they can't piss you off, it murders them, it eats their ass.
Definitely.
So I said, "Well, I'll tell you what." I said, "I know what these guys are making." And I said, "I want to be fair with you." And I said, I'm not gonna try to kill you or the company, with what I'm doing. But I said, "I tell you what, I want a 3-year deal." I said, "This is gonna be easy for you." I said, give me 2 years at $300,000 and a fourth year at 4. And I said then, or a third year at 4. Sorry, I think I said 4 years, but so a 3-year deal. So 2 years at $300,000 and a fourth year at $400,000. And I mean, I said it that quick, and he answered me so fast back that I went, ah, man, like I knew I made a mistake. I probably could have asked for twice that. Because, you know, he said, okay, I'll have the papers for you tomorrow.
Wow.
So he had the contract that fast.
Right.
But I mean, he was a nasty, he handled different, everything as far as business differently. I never saw a different side of Jim Hurd. So Jim Hurd, you know, to his wife and family, might have been the nicest guy on the planet. But man, I mean, dealing with him business-wise,
Bad business.
yeah, he just, and he was a successful businessman too. But as far as wrestling, he wasn't a people person, and he just did not know how to talk to anybody.
Now, when you came back, were you supposed to be the Scorpion, the Black Scorpion?
No,
No, okay. That was later anyway, so. Then Sid was the Horseman at the time, I believe, Sid Vicious.
yeah.
What were your thoughts on that?
Well, I mean, Sid is one of those guys that you know, Sid is such an impressive person. His ring ability, you know, at that time, you know, was still a little rough, you know, because one of the horsemen. But he's so impressive, and I mean, when you look at him, you know, people just, you know, geez, look at this big guy. But Sid is really, you know, he's a soft-hearted guy, but he's got a reputation, you know,
Right.
about like I do. You know, if he doesn't like something, you know, he's flighty.
Right.
You know, he'll leave at the drop of a hat. So that's the way Sid is, and I never really got to be friends with Sid just because of, you know, not really being around each other. But Rotundo, you know, who is one of my best friends, is great friends with Sid. So I'm sure, you know, that we could have a friendship. You know, just there was just never never a way for it to take place. But I worked with him a lot, and I enjoyed working with him. You know, it was okay. You know, it was kind of, you know, if it was a dance, you know,
Right.
then he was stepping on my toes. But you know, he learned, and he's made a lot of money, and he's done well. He's taken care of himself. So.
No, in 1991, Ric Flair left the company and went over to the World Wrestling Federation. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, when Rick did that, that's just another one of those issues. That's when. See, I have two opinions of Rick. I grew up from the time I was about from 12 years old till now. You know, I've known Rick. So there I was. You know, I was a teenager. You know, I was working out and training at Rick's house. We lived one house apart. You know, Blackjack and Rick. You know, there's one house between us. You know, I got to drive his limos sometimes, you know, and I would train with him, and my old man would walk down to his house and we'd train, and we'd all train together. That's when I'm doing the 1,500 Henry
Right.
squats. So, I mean, Flair was really impressed with that, you know, because what we did is then they got to where they were timing me when I was doing it to see how fast I could do 1,500. So, I mean, man, just painful, you know, working out. But Rick has, you know, he always lands on his feet. And I guess, you know, I do too. You know, I don't know if you call it luck or you call it, you know, just being able to roll with the punches. But, you know, you got to stick in there. And when you do that, sometimes you have to take advantage of people. And I was one of the people that when he left, you know, what I was saying was you, for years, groomed people for the championship, you know, for the world belt. And it was I think it was about 2 weeks. before it was supposed to take
This
place.
is batch 91 cage match play.
Yeah, that I was supposed to, I was supposed to take the belt from Flair, and then we would, we'd go around, and I probably would have put it back on him, after a while. But he wasn't happy, and he left with the belt, and the things that they did with the belt up in the WWF, it was just they really just abused, what that championship meant, and where the personal part came in there was just that Rick wouldn't do it for me. There's kind of an unwritten code, that it's not really spoken, but you're just supposed to do the right thing. And that was when Rick left, and he broke the chain of the way that the NWA championship, and then I guess maybe it was combined later, I think it was. But anyway, that's when he broke the chain of the way that business was supposed to be handled. Well, I don't know anybody that got along with Jim Herd. Like I said, his practices with people is,
Can we get that?
to say the least. No, that's okay. Go leave a message. He wasn't a people person. So I'm sure that Rick probably had contract problems with him. Rick wanted to be at a point where, I'm gonna let this thing quit ringing. I think I only 2 more. There we are. Anyway, Rick, I believe, like you said, it was a power play, but he handled it wrong. But jumping ahead, he was able to come back. But Vince, they went up there and they abused, they abused that, and they really ruined the reputation of what that was. So WCW had to create a new World Heavyweight Championship. So that was when, Luger and I did the thing, and because of losing Flair, a top heel, that Luger was in the position to where, they told me that the people that were there said, man, we know that it's supposed to be your turn, but with the way things have happened, we need Luger to do it. And I said, fine, hey, let's do it. I'm not worried about it. So there, I put Luger over with the thing, with Harley right there, and as I remember, I don't think it was any kind of questionable finish. I think I did it, outright for it.
Right.
And that's what I always believe, is trying to, when you're in the ring, you got to take care of business. Once you're out of the ring and you're in the dressing rooms, anything can happen. But that's why it's pro wrestling. It's sometimes you gotta really fight in the ring, and sometimes you can just walk through something. And then that was one of those deals where Flair left, and he kind of threw things into an uproar, to where it was like it was a mess and had to be straightened out quick.
Right. What are your memories of Brian Pillman?
Pillman and Mike Graham and I, went out a lot. We went out to clubs and everything. Pillman could. The fun part of it was, is that I guess, I have or had a reputation, with the guys in the dressing room, to where, I could go and, play all night and then, still be up from the night before and then go and do my thing in the ring, which I don't do that anymore. But Pillman was one of those guys too. We'd go out to the bars. My wife knows anyway. I mean, we'd go to the, like the Cheetah or strip clubs. And we'd stay out all night and party, and we'd live on 30 minutes of sleep a day. And there were times when Pillman was one of those guys. He could hang in there. So You know, I've got good memories of Pillman. He just he was a wild man.
How about Dustin Rhodes?
Dustin is one of those guys. You know, he's he's hard to be friends with, but I think that. Well, I'm gonna tell Dustin, you know, that I'm his best friend, and I think that he knows that because Dustin he's just like his old man. I mean, he's moody, he's weird. I mean, you know, he does stuff. You know, he's obnoxious, but you know, I know that about him because I've known his old man, you know, all my life, and it's just, you know, nobody else. He doesn't have very many friends because of that, because of his attitude.
All right.
But it's something, you know, that I overlook it because shit, he's harmless.
What do you remember of working with Steve Austin?
Austin,
And did you see big potential in him? So,
actually, I did, and I believe that the reason that Austin left also was over contract, you know, was over money. But Austin was, you know, he had the long blonde hair, and Austin told me himself, you know, he said, man, there I was in Dallas, I saw you. He said, man, I wanted to be in the wrestling business. You know, Austin said that to me. So, you know, I worked with him, and he had the ability. But when I'm assuming it was the money issue because, you know, that's so many times since that first change took place with the Road Warrior, Crockett, it was a different ballgame.
was Kip Fry any different?
You know, Kip Fry, I'm not going to say he was inept because, you know, he's an intelligent person, but I don't think he wanted the job. I don't think he wanted to be there, and I don't think that he wanted to have to deal with the people that were there.
Right.
Now, I don't know if Kip is still with, I think he went over to the Cartoon Network. Kip was a nice guy.
He wasn't a wrestling guy, though.
No, not a wrestling guy. And he was too nice, and he didn't understand the wrestling business.
Now,
That's what happened.
another guy came in totally opposite of Kip, is Bill Watts.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts when Bill Watts came in?
You know, Bill Watts is he's almost a clone of Jim Herd, and I mean, he's one of the most brash. He'll speak to anybody, you know, what's on his mind, and he doesn't care if you approve of what he says or thinks at all. You know, he's got his own idea about things, and you know, I think that he could successfully run another wrestling company, but man, he needs some counseling, dealing with people. Because I mean, people would run from him because, you know, they didn't want to speak to him. He's a hard guy to talk to. I could talk to him, but it was the same old thing, you know. It's like water off a duck's back, you know. It's like, I mean, he'd lay into me. I'll tell you what. There was a finish we were supposed to do in Philadelphia, and I don't exactly remember who my partner was, but it was Steve Williams and Terry Gordy we were working with, and the finish didn't go exactly as planned. So, you know,
Was it Rude? Was Rude involved in that? No.
no, and I don't remember who my partner was, but you know, it was a big. I don't think it was a pay-per-view or anything, but it was a big show. But me being the senior member in the ring, he pulled me off in his office, and he said, "You fucking idiot! Why the fuck did you do that?" And I said, "Man," I said, "you're talking to the wrong guy." I said, "I got that match out of that mistake." I said, "You need to go talk to the other guys that you put in the match because they forgot where they were. They forgot the finish."
All right.
So here I am, I'm in the ring, and I'm directing 3 other guys around because 2 forgot. So I'm directing it to try to get somewhere near where we were supposed to be. and he chewed my ass out over that, and we ended up with the same, with the same outcome of the match, and trying to produce, what the effect was that we wanted, but also on that time I was on his booking committee and I was helping him. Hey, I had a guaranteed contract and I was there helping him book, and I was going to these meetings. He pulled me off on the side, so I let him say what he had to say, and I told him, that he's talking to the wrong guy. I said I had to be the general. I had to lead the thing around. And then I told him, after we left that office, we went back into the meeting with the little booking committee, and I said, you know what? I said, I'm on this committee because you asked me to be here and help you. And I said, I don't get paid an extra dime to listen to you berate me and say the things that you say to me. I said, I'll just be at work. I said, you can do whatever you want. I said, but I'm not coming up here for this office again while you're here. And he was like, you can't walk out and leave. I said, hey man, I'm not getting paid any extra. I said, check out my contract. So
That was it.
I was just, then I was one of the boys again, in the dressing room, and I didn't have to do, like what I had to do in that tag match, like, okay, come on, get your ass over here and do this
Right.
and do that. And we're trying to have trying to take control of chaos